Hi everyone, I'm Max Haddad. Welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. It's getting a little bit more difficult to talk about things. Think of things to talk about because I'm starting to feel like it seems like I'm just whining and complaining about how hard my life has been for 3 or 4 years or whatever, and that's not the case. That's what it seems like. I want to clarify briefly, and then we'll move on to today's video. I feel really strongly about the experience that I had, clearly, and I think the reasons why should be pretty obvious. But prison sucks, and it sucks worse for basically everyone else more than it did for me. I was super blessed and lucky to have the people in my life that I do and the resources that I had, and it's just a really awful place to be, and it's a particularly awful place to be if you're suffering from addiction. And if you're already behind the eight ball in life, it's just putting you even further behind it. So if I were to say what my goal is for starting this YouTube channel, it would be to have some impact. Maybe just on people that are listening to the videos, get them to think a little bit differently about the people that live behind bars. But maybe bigger than that, that would be awesome. Some type of prison reform. I don't know how that works. And it's a small YouTube channel, and I'm just one guy, but stuff does need to change. And in feeling that I have just been whining for a week, which is not the case, but feeling that way, I thought that I should talk today about some of the more positive pieces of my prison experience. There weren't a lot, but the ones that were pretty big. It's not small stuff. It wasn't like, yeah, the mashed potatoes were good. It's stuff like you're forced to find people to connect with that you are truly kindred with. It's not like the outside world where, yeah, they're my coworkers, I'm friends with them. That's not how it works. People are not making friends in prison based on, we're 7 feet from each other. You know, one of my least favorite people that I met there slept to my immediate left for 6 months straight. You know, he was stealing coffee from me, all sorts of different stuff. That wasn't even the worst of it, but you're not getting to know people because of proximity. You have the only thing you have in common is that you've all committed a crime, you've all had it a little bit rough, and that bonds you to some extent, but it more so just sets you in opposition to the guards. You don't love each other because of that. So the friends that you do make, you end up being really, really close to. And even if you're friendly with lots of people, which I was, most people in prison really are trying to get along with everyone around them. A lot of times it's just to get something or to look a certain way. But the friends that you make that you really, really care for, it becomes a really serious loyalty. And in most cases, these are people that you would literally fight for because you know that they would do the same thing to you. And their life could very well be in danger. Really, at any point, somebody's having a bad day, they might pick your buddy to screw up. You know, they might hurt them to make themselves feel better, and it might be on you to step in. And that's a risk that you have to decide if you want to take for someone or not. Is this friendship with somebody I met in prison who I didn't know before I was here worth potentially having to stay in prison for longer? Even if you didn't catch another charge for fighting somebody, which you probably wouldn't, they can take time from you because every day that you do in prison is good time. Like good behavior time. So you're doing a certain percentage, unless you've got a very, 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 very serious crime, you're doing a percentage of the total time that you were sentenced. But if you get into more trouble in prison, they can say, hey, all that time that you got credited that you aren't actually going to have to do, well, now you're going to have to do it. And it happens all the time. People get months added, years added. People will go in sometimes with the mentality that they're going to max out, which means they're going to go in and purposefully set themselves up to get 0 credit time. So they have to do, if they had 10 years, they were only going to do 6.5. They're going to do all 10 years because they don't want to have that over their head the whole time. They can't handle the pressure of having to behave well for that long. They'd rather just know that they're doing the 10 years and then after that get to do whatever they want to do. Drugs, fight, gang shit, all that. They don't want to have to worry about it. So they tell their people on the outside, parents, friends, girlfriends, kids, hey, I'm going to be gone for 10 years, even when the situation could be 3.5 years shorter. But you, depending on your character, but basically most people really, when they've found their people in prison, they're willing to take that risk if it's necessary. There was somebody that I stood up for, but I was lucky because it never came to fighting, but other people ended up fighting for him. I mentioned it, I think in the first video, whatever, offhand. His name was JC, and he was younger than me, but pretty unhealthy. Meth addict, partially blind from diabetes that was pretty severe. And he was so helpless. He would hate me saying this. He was so helpless. He just was extremely emotionally immature. He was mean to the people that he should have been nice to, and he was nice to the people he should have been mean to or just ignored. And that would get him into squabbles sometimes. But you could tell if you just paid attention that he was a good dude. He was mama's boy. That's all he wanted to talk about was his mom. Right before he had gone to prison, while he was in jail waiting to go, his dad had died. So his mom was on the outside dealing with that death by herself. He was, of course, grieving and then felt bad for his mom. So all he wanted to talk about was his mom, how much he loved her, how much he was worried about her, wrote her letters all the time. When we first got to the orientation dorm, I had met him at this RDC place, the place where you're being, monitored before you go to real prison. Met him there. We happened to go to the same prison, the same dorm. Which is not that crazy that happened, but it's what happened. And when he first got there, somebody took his stuff. They said, we'll watch over your stuff for you. Don't worry about it. If you need something, it'll be in my box. You can come ask me. And he thought that somebody was trying to be friendly, and he didn't understand that, dude, they just took your stuff and they told you, don't worry, if you need something, let me know. As in, like, something of your stuff, just come ask me for permission. You can have some of it. So I went. And I said, we're not doing this. And you need to deal with these things immediately. So we went up to the dude. I said, hey, where's your box? I'm going to get his stuff out. He was a big guy. I'm a big guy. But just based on the way it was done, even though I was still pretty naive, I kind of just got a sense that he didn't want to fight. He knew that he could just trick this kid, JC, into giving him his stuff. But I also thought it was important for me to set a standard. Like, hey, Max isn't afraid to go and do things like this. I don't know what I would have done if he was ready to fight. I was still such a coward at that point. I'm actually, now that I'm talking about it, I'm kind of amazed I did this. I'm making it sound like I was smarter and cooler and more courageous than I was or whatever. I don't know what I would have done if he wanted to fight. Probably bitched out and just said, oh, I'm okay, have the stuff. So that happened with JC. Then maybe 3, 4, 5 days later, this group of guys, hear me, who happened to be black. They didn't do this because they were black and he was white. They just happened to be black and hungry. Took his stuff. I say stuff, like food that he had somehow gotten from, I don't know, that he'd saved or whatever. I really don't even know where he got it from. Taken it. Now, this is what I found out when this happened. JC had grown up with someone who happened to later become a second in command at this prison of the Aryan Brotherhood. So because of that, because he was pals with this guy from years ago, I don't think they were even talking anymore, but this guy, Buckethead, knew that JC was on camp being at the prison, and said to his brothers, his gang members, take care of JC. If something happens, let me know, blah, 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 feed him, take care of him. And Buckethead knew that JC was helpless, basically. So the Aryans step in to get JC's stuff back. Now, it's not about white and black, but because it's the Aryans and because they happen to be black, it became a white and black thing. race was not at all a part of this, and then that's what it became. JC had nothing to do with it. His food and stuff had nothing to do with it. It just became a battle that was founded upon the tension that already existed in this dorm, in this prison, probably in all prisons, between people that believe in white pride and people that happen to be black. It's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's a shame that the need to survive and the fear of not surviving motivates people to believe that they're better than others just based upon their skin color. And then it's a further shame that that causes people to get hurt and killed. But I wasn't comfortable throwing JC to the wolves. I wasn't comfortable letting him have to handle himself while the people protecting him were off like fighting, because he was by himself and there was a really good chance that somebody was going to step up to JC while there was this distraction at the other side of the dorm and hurt him for causing this. And so I put my shoes on, which again, I said earlier, basically means like you're ready to fight. And it's not a sign. It's you want to have shoes on so you're not slipping around everywhere. It's not like, oh, he's got his shoes on. There's the flag of war. That's not what it is. And JC came and sat with me over in my bed, basically, for the entire night that he was allowed to do that. Eventually, you have to go back to your bunk area. But they were going into the bathroom, and not they being the Aryans, and this group of people who ended up being primarily affiliated with I believe, the folks, I think. Foggy and I don't know that much about gangs. I know more than anybody who's not been to prison or doesn't study it, probably. But anyways, came and sat on my bed while the Aryans and the folks were going into the bathroom and fighting. This was the night that the guard told us, hey, you guys can go into the bathroom and fight one-on-one, but as soon as anybody gets jumped, I'm calling the captain or the sergeant. We're going to have to shut you guys down. Crazy. Crazy. So luckily, nobody came for JC. I didn't have to see if I was actually as cool and strong and courageous as I thought I was. It benefited me because I looked that way. Luckily, no association was made between me and the Aryans. That would have been really shitty for me because that's not how I believe. And crappy for me, too, because that's dangerous. I think people at this point had picked up on the fact that I'm half Lebanese, too. So you can't be an Aryan and half from the Middle East. So I think that was probably working in my favor, too. JC was one of the people that I really cared for. He's written me some letters since we got out. I know that he's back with his mom now, and things are as good as they can be. I haven't heard from him in a while, but that's not entirely his fault. That's me. When I first got out of prison, I wanted to talk to these people that I had associated with, but I didn't want to have them super duper close to me. Not because I felt it was a risk to my sobriety, but because it felt like prison. It reminded me of prison. There's still trauma. It's gotten so much better, but it felt like being in prison again. I don't know how else to put it. I'd say the best friend that I made while I was in prison, I mentioned Chris and Diesel in the last video, but best bud, still talk to him. I just talked to him a couple days ago. His name is Thrasher. That's not his birth name. That's not the name his mom gave him, and it wasn't given to him because he's a Thrasher, super violent. He loves skateboarding, and there's a skateboard magazine called Thrasher Magazine, and he's got it tattooed on his arm right there. And so everybody just called him Thrasher. And he was the perfect combination of a really, really smart, funny person packed into a really, really dumb, insane person's brain. Dude made me laugh all the time, was really caring, empathetic, intelligent, was the hardest chess match I ever played. He beat me all the time, probably more than 50%. He's better than me. And not that I'm great at chess, but also there was this part of him that inspired him when he was on the outside to use drugs actively and rob people, teenagers and stuff, people that were younger than him. He was, his words, not mine. He was a bad dude. You know, he wasn't comfortable with people saying you're a good guy because he knew that he wasn't, or at least he hadn't been that way up to this point. He ended up doing 4 years. He's out now. He's back with his kid. He's with his son. And it's tough not to say their names. His son and son's mother, they're basically married, but I don't think they technically are. But at that point, they've been through so much together that a ring and a contract from the state is not going to do much else for him. So this dude had my back. I knew that. It was one of those things where if Thrasher had gotten into a situation with somebody, I would be willing to stand up for him. Depending if it's over a cookie, no, I'm not going to do that. That's the thing too, is you have to have some discernment with the fights that you decide to get into. They're definitely something that you can avoid. It's not a must, at least at the prison I was at, and I think probably at a lot of them. But if you're going to choose to help someone defend themselves, you don't just do it for whatever reason. If it was somebody really threatening to hurt him, that would be. But if it's over, like, you owe me $1 for those ramen soups I gave you last week, well, I'm not going to fight about that. I'm not going to stay away from my home and people and what I love for 6 more months because somebody gave away too many, beef noodle soups. So we bonded quickly. When I first met him, he had, I believe, just the one tattoo, and he was somebody that once he got one prison tat, he wanted a billion of them, and he ended up with really dumb, stupid tattoos, like of a knife for no reason. Not even a particular fan of knives or hunting or anything. He just, give me a knife, and, like this thing that was, I think, supposed to be like a shark with, biceps. And it ended up looking like a seal. Because people in prison, they would get a hold of this gun, this tattoo gun. Sorry, Jesus. They would rent it from somebody, or they would make it themselves. Not easy to do, very tough. And so these things would sell for a lot. Tattoos would sell for way cheaper than on the street. But like $75 in prison is a lot of money. It's a ton of money. That's 3 soups is $1. So what is that? 225, please God, let my math be right. 225 ramen noodle soups is a lot of food for people that are starving, and that's what you had to pay. The equivalent of it wasn't literally a bag of that many, but food worth that amount to somebody for the tattoo work. But he loved them, and I think a lot of that for people is, let me finish my thought. People pay a lot of money to use these tattoo guns, or they get these tattoo guns, make them themselves, But that doesn't mean they're an artist. And even if they are a wonderful drawer, that doesn't mean they could do tattoos. That's something that I didn't really realize until I saw them happening 24 hours, 7 days a week, is that drawing on skin is way different than drawing on paper. I didn't think about it, and that's the case. And you could definitely see that when a lot of the guys' tattoos. There was a guy named Buck who always reminded me of the scene from Kill Bill, where I'm not going to get into too many details just because it's not family friendly. None of this is. But he says, my name's Buck, and I like to, you can fill in the blank. But if you watch it on TV where it's been, censored, he says, my name's Buck, and I like to party. And it's this voice that doesn't make any sense with his, he's got a really, my name's Buck, and I like to party. I love it. So always reminded me of that. He looked like him. He was kind of big and goofy, and he got his face covered in tattoos, and all of them were terrible. And he wasn't like a super ugly, awful looking dude, but when he ruined himself. He wanted like a bullseye on the front of his nose, which why anyways, wanted a bullseye put on the front of his nose, and whoever was doing it couldn't do the line work, so it ended up just being a giant black blob on the tip of his nose. And so, I knew him like one day, no blob, next day with a blob, and he just walked around, and it looked like he was wearing like a permanent clown nose. He looked absurd. It was so silly, and part of me felt really bad for him, to be honest with you, because he was sort of like an adult child, A big part of me feels bad for him. And it was silly, but it was like, he became a joke on accident, and that's not the greatest thing to become when you're incarcerated. Um, so I have kept in contact with Thrasher. I'd love to be in contact with these other guys. A lot of them I don't know how to get a hold of them anymore. But I didn't expect to leave prison and miss anything. I didn't think, I'm definitely not going to miss the food. I'm not going to miss sleeping on metal. I'm not going to miss having 2 outfits and both of them being, tan and uncomfortable, 20-year-old linen, whatever. I'm not going to miss hearing screaming, shouting, fighting at all hours of the night, never sleeping for more than 2 hours at a time. I know I'm not going to miss this stuff. And at the end of my sentence, in the last day of prison, I was sitting there with these guys and I realized, like, oh shit, I am going to miss these dudes, because this in here was real. This was real friendship. These were people that were willing to lose their lives for me. And I was willing to do the same thing. And I know next time I go and get a job working at Applebee's, Sean the bartender is not going to be willing to lay his life on the line to keep me safe. It was real friendship. It was serious stuff. And it's something that, unless you're really lucky or try really, really hard, you don't have access to on the outside. And there's still a hole in my heart. Still a hole in my heart from leaving that behind. I'm lucky that I get to talk to these guys, at least a couple of them still. But it's different. It's what we were talking about the other day, is 99.8% of prison is negative, but that, 0.2, you're connected to an energy that's not easy to connect to sitting here alone in a room behind a computer recording this. That's for sure. Anyways, guys, just trying to keep you enlightened. If you got any more video ideas, let me know, because I'm hurting for them. Not really. It'll be fine. But have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Bye.